Hello everybody and welcome back to the CRYENGINE 5.7 LTS video tutorial series. This video will be the part 2 of our continuing UI series and where we implement UI elements into our projects. We will be adding a main menu using Schematyc. Now here's Galaxis in the CRYENGINE asset database right on the website, and we can just download this project. We're going to be using this because, well, we're not building a game today, we're just implementing a main menu into a game. By default, the game actually doesn't have a clickable menu. It has some text that says press start or enter, where you click the enter key and the game starts. It also has some UI elements like the health and the time and your score. Now, at just under 8.5 megabytes, this game is really quite small, and the schematic graphs are going to be relatively basic. There are quite a few graphs in this game, but it will give us a good idea of how Schematyc works and how it will interact with the nodes that we're going to add so that we can make a clickable menu. Now, I already have this downloaded into my CRYENGINE launcher, so if you click download, you can open it in the launcher. I'm going to navigate to it right now. You can see in the Asset Library tab of the launcher, I have the Galaxis sample project. Just click these 3 dots, and I'm going to do Reveal in Explorer and see what we have. As you can see, we have a very standard CRYENGINE project folder directory, and of course our galaxis.cry project, which I'm going to right-click and do Launch Game. Now, I don't know about you, but this game could use a sweet main menu, and that's what we're going to add because while this game is complete, it only has this press start or enter text on the beginning, and I think a nice title, some clickable buttons would really complement this project, so we're going to go ahead and add that to this game and make it even more complete. And there's also other intricacies to this as well because, you know, the menu needs to show up when you die because at this current state, when you die, well, nothing happens. And you can either press enter again to start the game over, but it doesn't really tell you that. So there's certain things that we can really add to benefit this project. Or alternatively, we could just stare at these sweet, sweet particle physics for hours on end. But alas, we will start working on our menu. Now, there is some software requirements that we will go over real quick. Of course, CRYENGINE 5.7 LTS is a must-have. We will also be using Adobe Animate so that we can apply ActionScript 3.0 to our menu. Towards the end of the video, we'll be using Visual Studios for a little C++, and we'll also use Notepad++ so that we can edit and modify our XML documents. And it should be mentioned that any version of Adobe Animate or Visual Studio should work in this case, and for Notepad++, you can use whatever your preferred plain text editor is. To start making our menu, we are going to open up this menu.fla, which is an Animate project, and this comes in the tutorial asset pack. This is a menu that I've made, and we will be using this today for our tutorials. If we hit Control-Enter, it'll give us this preview of our menu. We can click the play button until the cows come home, but it won't actually do anything. If we imported this into CRYENGINE as is, it wouldn't play, it wouldn't quit, the music wouldn't mute, so we're going to apply these ActionScript functions. If we go to frame 1 and hit F9, or go to Window and go down to Actions, we're going to open up this Actions window. As you navigate this Actions window, you might see some ActionScript in here, but this is just for the controls page. So this controls page will not interact with CRYENGINE at all. We're not going to tie any logic into this. This is a simple little bit of ActionScript that I've included so that the control page reveals when you click the control button. To start adding functionality to our menu, first we want to add a line in line 1 of frame 1. Now, if we hit enter in frame 1 on line 1, we'll clear up this controls part of the ActionScript and move it down a bit, and we'll clear line 1 up so that we can type out this first line. We're going to type out import space flash.events.mouse event in camel case, and we're going to close that out with a semicolon and just hit enter. With that done, we're going to give our play button some functionality. With the selection tool, which is V for a hotkey, we're just going to choose the play button so that we can see the instance name. And this name is something we're going to be referring to in the ActionScript line for the button. In the top right here, you can see the instance name. I've given all of the buttons instance names in this file. The play button instance name is playBut. With that information, we are going to go to frame 1 and hit F9 and open up our Actions window again. And these are the exact lines of ActionScript that you're going to want to type out in the Actions window. basically this first line, you click the button and it says you click the play button. The second line is the function called play, and it says, oh, I have been clicked. I'm going to tell Scaleform, and Scaleform goes, oh, yeah, we have been clicked. Let's fire off play button clicked that's tied to all of this. And this is essentially just a game of telephone between ActionScript, the XML document, and Schematyc in CryEngine. Now with our ActionScript line added, we're going to hit Control S and save our file. And we're going to go to File, Export, Export to Movie, and save this into our UI folder. I went over this in more detail in the Part 1 video tutorial, so make sure you check that out if you get a little bit lost here. And we will save this as menu.swf. With that exported, we're going to navigate to the UI folder of our Galaxis project. Within the Galaxis UI directory, there's a couple of files already there. There are the HUD main GFX files. These are for the existing HUD. Now I've dragged a GFX export shortcut into this directory, which I did in the previous tutorial. And I'm going to drag the menu.swf, which we just saved, right onto that shortcut to spit out our menu.gfx and the accompanying DDS. Now, if you remember from our previous tutorial, the next step is to make an XML that will call upon our GFX in CryEngine. I also included the menu.xml this time in the tutorial asset pack, so you can just copy and paste it into the UI elements folder. Regardless, I'm going to pop this XML open, and we're just going to take a peek at what the lines inside are. First, we have the UI elements and the UI element line, and these are kind of categorical lines. The second line, the UI element name, is going to be the name that shows up when we add our schematic node. Below that, we have our GFX line, and this does need to be specific, so the file needs to reflect exactly what the GFX name is in the UI folder. Below that, we have our constraints, which are simply the constraints for our GFX that we want to apply. And last but certainly not least, we have our event line. And this event line is quite important because it ties our ActionScript to Schematyc. It bridges the two together. So with that all saved, we are going to go back to the project root folder, and we're going to right-click on the galaxis.cry project and open it up in the sandbox. So let's open up CryEngine 5.7 LTS. To open up our level, we can either double-click on this Levels folder here in the Asset Browser, or we can go up to the top left and select File, Open, and Level. With the level open, these particle effects will appear in the perspective viewport, and my goodness, they look so satisfying. I could stare at these things for hours. But more importantly, I'm going to mute the music in the sandbox editor. So on the top here, we can click this little mute button, and keep in mind this won't mute the in-game music. This is just for when you're editing. And of course, if we hit Control-G, we can test our game, and we can play Galaxis within the sandbox editor. So this is with no changes, this is just the standard game, and let's add this play button. So we want to open up the schematic editor. If we go up to Tools and go down to Deprecated, and we're going to go to Schematic Experimental and open that up. So with the game entity open, we will go down to Graphs, and there will be one called the Signal Graph. We'll take a look at that in the graph view. So to get our play button working, well, first we need a mouse cursor on our screen because, well, there's no mouse cursor by default, so let's get one going. In the first line of the signal graph, we have this start signal, and we're going to delete these next three nodes, these input nodes. We have a keyboard input and 2 for controllers. Next, we're going to go up to the top left and do Add Component, and we're going to type in Flash. And now you can see Flash Element Galaxis Menu. And that Galaxis menu is that name in the UI element line that I was talking about. We're going to go back to our game signal graph, right-click, and type in Set Instance. And we should see a Set Instance flag underneath this menu component that we just added. And we're going to connect that to Start. And for the properties, we're going to make it a mouse event and check the value. We also want to right-click and add one more of the same exact node. We're going to connect them. And for the properties on this one, we're going to do hardware cursor, and we're also going to check the value. We're going to be sure everything is connected, and we're going to go to the end of this first graph line. At the very end, we have this UI HUD dynamic set start text visible node. We're going to delete that, get rid of it. And we're going to right click and do set viz. And we should see now a set visibility node that's specifically for our Galaxis menu component. If we connect that and make sure the visible is checked, we can test our game and see that we have a mouse cursor and we have our menu. Now, this is pretty cool, but if we hit the play button, well, the menu doesn't quite go away. So we want to change that. We're going to hop back into the game signal graph, and we are going to go down to the second line in the graph. And this second line is when the game is actually started. So the first one is kind of the setup, the menu setup, and then this second line fires off once the game actually starts. We are going to replace two nodes in this second line. We're going to, first, let's delete this UI HUD dynamic set start text visible node. And we're going to copy and paste our new Flash element Galaxis menu set visibility node and then connect them. And we want to make sure the visible check is unchecked because the menu shouldn't be visible when the game actually starts. We also want to delete this input on action press node because that was tied to the old keyboard input actions that we deleted. So we're going to get rid of that. We're going to type in Flash, and we should see at the very bottom a signal node called play that's tied to the Flash Galaxis menu. And we're going to actually get rid of these equal and branch nodes. We don't need them since we're only using our mouse. So let's connect that play signal node to the game reset, and that should be it. So let's test it out. We're going to go back to the perspective, hit Control G, and we are going to click play, and now we have immediate gameplay, and the menu is gone. But if we play until we die, we see that the menu just doesn't reappear. So we need the menu to reappear once the player dies, and to do that, we just need to copy, again, this Flash element Galaxis menu set visibility node, and paste it into the appropriate graph line. Now, if you can guess what graph line this would be in, great. If not, I'll tell you right now. The end of the game event on player killed line. So if we go down, we should see it. We're going to paste it at the very end, and we're going to connect it. We also want to make sure that the value is checked in the properties because, well, we want it to appear again once the player is killed. So we test this out, we click play, the game starts, we play until our heart's content or until we get cornered by these triangle things and bounce around like a pinball and explode into a million fragments. And immediately upon disintegration, our menu is back on the screen, and now we can start another game. To break down what we've added, we first added the nodes to display our mouse cursor, and then we replaced the start text with our menu. Then we added our play input trigger, which essentially will fire off the next line once it's pressed, followed by hiding the menu once the play button is pressed. So let's save our progress, hit Control S in both Schematyc and in the level to save them both. If you can't save your schematic, you might have to right-click on the Cry project for Galaxis and uncheck the Read Only tab in the Properties. And with that all saved and closed out, we're going to open up our menu.fla in Adobe Animate, and we're going to add more ActionScript. But I know, we're just going to copy and paste because we're going to reuse the same exact line that we've already written, but we're just going to change a few names. With our project open in Adobe Animate, we're going to check out this mute button here. We have an instance name of mute, and if we go to frame 1 and hit F9, we'll open up the actions window. In frame 1, we're just going to copy the existing action script that we have for the play button and paste it. As mentioned, the instance name is mute, so we're just going to change playbut to mute. Anywhere that we see play in these lines, we'll just change that to mute. And of course, the fs command, we want to change that to mute button clicked. Just like before, we're going to go to export, export to movie, and we're going to overwrite our menu.swf. We will then open up our UI folder, and we're going to convert this to a GFX as well and replace the existing GFX. Next, we're going to open up the UI elements folder, and in the menu.xml, we're just going to add one line. So we can copy and paste the event line as is, and just like our action script, we just need to replace the names. So event name, we're just going to name that mute. We're going to change our fs command to mute button clicked to reflect our action script. and we can save that. And that's it. So we can get into a flow of things. These things don't take long when you get into a rhythm. Just like that, we're going to open up our project again in CRYENGINE 5.7 LTS. With our project now open, we will be opening the schematic entity that is named music. We opened up the game one before, but now we're going to open up a music one. And as you can see in the signal graph of this music schematic entity, it is quite simple. The music is always playing, and only when you quit the game, the music stops. So we're going to add a bit more spice to this. In the top left, we're going to go to Add and add a component, and we're going to type in Flash again and just add the same Flash element Galaxis menu component. We're going to go back to the signal graph, and we're going to right-click and add a signal. If you type in Flash, again, we should see a signal at the bottom. This time it's called Mute. So we're going to select that Mute Flash element Galaxis menu signal. Next, we want to add a branch. So we're going to pop a branch in here and make sure that they are connected. Before we add any more nodes, we need to actually add a variable. If we go to the Add button once more, we can go down to Variable. And we'll give this a name. We'll name this isPlaying. In the properties, we're going to click this magnifying glass and make sure that it is a Boolean, and we're going to make sure the value is checked. Now back to our signal graph, we're going to right click and we're going to type in get, and there should be at the bottom, get is playing under music. We're going to put that somewhere. It's getting a little cramped in here, so let me space some of these things out. And we're going to connect the value of the get is playing to the branch. We're going to right click and type in the word trigger, and we're going to see a play trigger. We're going to add one of those, and we're also going to type in trigger again, and we're going to add a trigger stop. We'll just put those right next to the branch, and we're going to connect this false output to the trigger stop, and we're going to, oh, they're squiggly. Look, it's dancing. Dude. So we're going to connect that, and then we're going to connect the true output to the trigger play. We also want to add a set variable. So set is playing, and we're going to add two of those, and we're going to connect one to the stop and one to the play. In the properties of the set is playing node that is connected to the trigger play, we want to make sure that the value is unchecked. We're going to right click and add a trigger play, and we're going to connect that to the start node. And we also want to right click and add one more node, and that is going to be a set is playing. And all of this is complete. We've successfully made a switch for the mute button, and this will turn the music on and off depending on what state the button is in. So if we look at this like a light switch, well, it'll check to see if the light switch is on before you even switch it. On the top here, we have our true value, the music is playing. And on the bottom, we have the false value, the music is not playing. Every time you click the button, the get is playing will see if the music is playing or not and decide accordingly whether the music should now be muted or start to play. And if we test this in our game, we'll be able to hit this mute button and play the game in pure silence, just like actual space. Well, not quite. We still have some sweet laser sounds. Let's go ahead and add a quit button to our game. And this quit button is going to be very similar to our play button, but there's going to be one difference, and that is there is no quit function in the game. There is a play function. We've seen that if you hit enter, the game starts, and that's kind of what the play button piggybacks off of, but there's no quit function. The only way to quit Galaxis is to Alt F4 or console quit, and that's not really the best practice. So do me a favor, do me a solid, and open up Adobe Animate one final time. And we're going to dive into this quit button. And this is a bit beefier. It's a bit more beef and cheesier. We can see that if we click the quit button, we have an instance name of quit. And we're going to copy and paste the ActionScript that we used for the previous buttons. And you guessed it, we're going to name it quit. Now we're going to go around and name this quit. And then we're going to name that quit, and they're all going to be quits. We want to make sure we have our quit button clicked, and we're going to save this project. And we also, of course, want to file and export. So we're going to export to movie. We are going to replace our menu.swf one more time. Navigate to that UI folder in the Galaxis project directory. And we are going to convert our menu.swf into a menu.gfx in its final form. It is peaked. It is finally here. So we need to update our XML to reflect this new addition of the quit. Just copy and paste that previous event line and replace mute or play with quit. We're going to do quit button clicked and save that one. Close that out. And next we need to add some lines of code to our game project so that our quit function works. And to do this, we do need Visual Studios. And we right-click on our galaxis.cry project and select Generate Solution. In the pop-up window, it'll ask you what version of Visual Studios you want to use. I'm using 2017. Some people prefer 2019. Some people prefer the latest version. But click Generate Solution, and it'll take a second, and you'll have a new folder in your project directory called Solutions. Open up this Solutions folder and dig through it, and you'll find this file, and it's called galaxis.sln, or Galaxis Visual Studio Solution. And you're going to want to double-click that, and it will open up in Visual Studios. The Visual Studios window is now open, and I'm going to go on the right here in the Solution Explorer and go to Galaxis. Click that little caret until we expand to Environment, and click the Nodes caret until we get to GameFunctions.cpp. In the game function CPP, I'm going to scroll down until I see the Get Safe Position line, so about line 100. And this line is essentially just saying the environment is calling on the console to execute a specific string. So it's just calling the quit command. And we're going to tie this quit command to our button. So if we scroll down even further in this same game function CPP, we're going to scroll down to line 210, and I'm going to hit enter and add a new opening squiggly bracket and hit enter once again. And I'm going to make a line that looks pretty much identical to the line above this one. So I'm going to type out autoconst p function equals schematic make environment function open parentheses end game colon quit game. Then I'm going to do a comma, and in this next space, I'm going to add a GUID. So I'm going to go up to Tools, go down to Create GUID, and I'm going to select option number 4, Registry Format. And select Copy and Exit, and then I'm just going to hit Control-V and paste that right into this gap here. This will paste it in quotations in these squiggly brackets, and we just need to make sure that we underscore cry GUID at the very end, comma, and we're going to close that out with a open quote, quit game, close quote, and we're going to put a semicolon at the very end. Next, we're going to hit enter, and in the following line on 213, we're going to type out p function arrow set description open parentheses, and within the parentheses, we're just going to type open quote, quits the game, close quote, close parentheses, a semicolon, and we're going to hit enter again. And on the 214 line, we're going to type scope.register, open parentheses, p function, close parentheses, semicolon. And this is the heart of the script. This is the chunk that is going to actually implement the quit console command as a function that we can utilize in Schematyc. Now with our line added, we just need to add the gamefunctions.h header info. So if we just click that, it's right below the game function CPP. If we scroll down to line number 36 and hit enter, we can type out on line 37 void space quit game open parentheses, close parentheses, and we're going to do a semicolon. So that's it. That is it. Those are all the lines of code that we are going to be adding. And with these lines added, you can hit Control-Shift-B so that it will build. If there's any errors in the build process, you'll see them in the bottom of this window here. But if you copied just what you saw in this tutorial, then you shouldn't have any errors and it'll build just fine. With our build now complete, we can actually open up our project right here in Visual Studio. In our Solution Explorer to the right, if we scroll down all the way to the bottom, there's a little thing that says Editor. Just right-click on that and select the little gear icon that says Set as Startup Project. Up here in the top left, we have this tab. We're going to click this and we're going to select Profile because by default it's set to Solution. And now that our project is selected in the Profile configuration, we're going to hit Control-Shift-B and this is going to build our project. And once you do that, you can click Local Windows Debugger in the top, and that should open up CRYENGINE 5.7 LTS right from Visual Studio, and you should have the updated Galaxis project with our new lines. Now, from there, we are just going to open up our Galaxis level, and with the level open, we're just going to open up the Schematyc editor. And we're going to go to the Game Schematic entity, and open up the signal graph. At the very bottom of our signal graph, we're going to add a new node. So next to the stop signal, we're going to right click and we're going to type in quit. And thanks to our crafty C++, there is a node called quit game. We're going to add that in. We're going to connect that to the UI set visibility node. And we also want to replace this stop signal. So all the way to the left, we're going to delete this stop signal and we're going to right click and add a signal. And this signal is going to be also called quit. So we're going to add that, we're going to connect that, and that's going to be it. And that is it. Now we have a fully functioning Galaxis menu. We can play the game, we can mute the music, we can quit the game. The menu pops up when the player dies, so we can play it again. We've created a play button using Schematyc. We've created a switch using Schematyc. We've implemented a button that didn't even exist in our game before, the quit button. So we've done a lot today, and I'm looking forward to seeing how you implement your own UI into your own games. So these skills are really transferable. Oh, one last thing. I forgot to test the quit button, so I'm just going to see if this quit button works real quick. All right, let's go over to quit, and